Hi, I'm Derek from Lovells. Today we're going to talk a little bit about four-wheel driving on sand. This is for newcomers to the field who perhaps haven't had a lot of experience and aren't that confident. When we're coming onto sand for the first time, very important that we have a look at it. We understand, is it firm packed sand, is it very soft sand, deep sand, hard sand? A number of people come to grips very easily by underestimating what the condition of the sand is. We can approach sand in a few different ways. Tyre pressure is the key, and we will select a tyre pressure that suits the conditions. If you have very soft sand, you want very low tyre pressures. You might have seen in an earlier video, I was running 16 PSI in Coffin Bay, and that's a great pressure for general sand use. Don't be afraid to use lower pressures. Just be aware you can't turn as quick, you have to take wider arcs in your corners. If you're doing just a very short distance, you can leave highway pressures in, but you do need to travel faster on the sand to ride on top of the sand. With low tyre pressures, you can lower your speed, take your time, pick your line, have a lot better traction on the sand. There's quite a bit of science to it in the way that the footprint of the tyre increases with the lower pressure. It's a very useful thing to study and understand. We've pulled up, we see our beach entry, we understood what the conditions are like, we've worked out what we want to do tyre-wise, we've set our tyre pressures. Now we're in the car, ready to go. There's a big queue of people behind us and we're pretty nervous about what we're going to do. So, first thing, pull up. You may go into low range if you have it. You'll definitely lock your centre diff if you have a centre diff lock, which all four-wheel drives will have. Very, very important. Traction control needs to be turned off. It's a fundamental error. If you leave your traction control on, because some people think, yeah, it improves my traction, you could bog yourself very quickly in the sand. Traction control has to go off. In a lot of cars, you've got traction control and then you've got stability control as well, such as in the 200 here. You can leave your stability control on. I prefer to turn it all off so I'm in control of what's happening. If you leave the traction control on, you get into soft sand, a wheel starts spinning, the engine goes, oh no, we've got a spinning wheel, let's cut the power. Before you know it, you've come to a complete stop, you've got your foot to the floor virtually and the car's not moving. That's the traction control taking over to stop your wheels spinning. On sand, we need the control to spin the wheels to get optimum traction. So turn your traction control off, high range or low range depending on your situation. Centre diff lock. If you've got front and rear diff locks and you want to engage them as well, do so. Yeah, the main thing is tyre pressure, traction control off, centre diff lock. In the 200 series we have our centre diff lock button here with the cross in the centre to show the centre diff lock. The traction control button is here. So when we're getting prepared to go, we'll line up, select neutral so we can control these things. Centre diff lock engaged, there will be a notification on the dashboard. One press to turn your traction control off, long press to turn your stability control off. So if centre diff lock is on, traction control is off, stability control is off. If our tyre pressures are good to go, we're good to go. In a particular situation, we might want low range. We're parked, we have to put the car into neutral in order for this to happen. Very important, it will only happen if the car is in neutral. Take our selector, turn it to low 4, and the car does the rest, engaging the low range. We have our 4 low indicator coming up on the dash there, and there'll also be a range of other features we can now select. One of the useful things that the 200 series has is the crawl control, where we can set a speed like a cruise control for going uphill or downhill, and the electronics does all the work for you, engaging the throttle and the brakes to keep a slow, steady speed, whether it's going uphill, downhill, whether it's trying to get you out of a bog. It's quite a useful feature for a number of reasons. So if you have an older four-wheel drive without the electronic aids, you will of course still have levers for engaging front and rear diffs or a centre diff lock. You don't have to worry about traction control, obviously. It's all down to you. Typically when we're on a beach as well, there will be ruts in the sand. On a very soft sand, as you'll see around from the pictures here, there'll be ruts from previous vehicles. It's a good idea to stay in those ruts. The sand in the bottom of the ruts will be packed from the heavier vehicles that have gone through prior, and so you can stay on top of that sand more easily. Plus the wheels will tend to follow and stay in the ruts. you try and get out of that rut. It does take a fair bit of effort to push across it and jump up from it. So just stay in the rut, you do less damage to the beach, and it's generally an easier ride. In this particular case, we're on sand, and it's very important we have to choose the right tyre pressures. A lower tyre pressure gives a larger footprint, gives us more control, we can go at a slower speed, we've got more traction, more ability to resist being bogged in the soft sand. We're now going to lower our tyre pressure. We'll choose just something. I have a tyre deflator here, which is set to 16 psi, my favourite pressure to go to. But as with any four-wheel driving, if you've lowered your pressure, you obviously need to have to pump up your tyres again. And so if you're alone, you need to carry a compressor. If you're with a group, make sure somebody has a compressor with them as well. It's no fun crawling on the highway at 16 psi for 20 k's to get to the nearest servo. You have to be prepared, you have to have your own compressor or some way to pump up your tyres again. Okay, we'll now use the deflator to start the process of deflating the tyre. Okay, we remove the valve cap and simply screw it on. And there we go. The air is now coming out of the tyre, and this might continue for 5 minutes or so until it will automatically cut off because there's a preset in the tyre deflator. Tyre deflators are a great tool. If you don't have it, of course, you're going to be stuck here with a stick trying to press the valve stem in to let the air out. Maybe you've got some other way of removing the valve stem. The beauty of a deflator such as this is it will stop when it gets to its preset pressure, so you don't have to monitor it overly much or overly excessively. Tyre deflators are available at any good four-wheel drive shop, online. They're really a must-have if you plan on going on off-road. We've talked about low pressure in the tyres on sand pressure. The same applies as well when we are off-road. If we're on a corrugated road, for example, you've got greater give in the sidewall, leads to a smoother ride. You get bashed around less, the car gets bashed around a lot less as well as giving the traction benefits. If you're on rocks and so on, the tyre can better mould itself to the terrain as well. So really, when you're off the blacktop, low tyre pressures is the key. But remember, you have to keep your speed down so you don't overheat the tyres, leading to a blowout. Likewise, you can't turn too sharply or you risk rolling the tyre off the bead as well. So low tyre pressures, lower speeds will lead to tyre longevity, less risk of punctures, and generally a happier day off-road. You might have seen when I took the tyre cap off, there's a little symbol on the end. This is because the tyre is fitted with a tyre pressure monitoring system, and that has a little sender in it that sends the pressure and temperature back to the little display we have here on the dash, which shows current readout of the various tyres around the car. In this particular case, the tyre pressure monitoring system has noticed that we've got a tyre going down quite rapidly because of the deflator, which is great, and has been setting off an alarm, which I've just quietened for the sake of the video. It keeps cycling around the various tyres, so we can still see the other tyres are all at sort of road pressures until we get to the final tyre, which is on its way down, which is coming up next in the sequence, currently at 22 psi. There's the alarm again. This particular version is an aftermarket version available from a number of retailers. There are loads of different manufacturers out there. A lot of new cars, particularly from the US, have it built in as standard, of course. Great gadget for monitoring your tyres. You can increase it to the number of sensors so that it's monitoring your trailer tyres as well. And just really quite useful for monitoring what's going on. And it gives you a warning when you've got a sudden deflation. So, you know, if you're on the highway and you suddenly pick up something, you're going to hear from this before you actually felt the fact that the car's handling has changed as the tyre's going down. See, the sound has changed now, so it's getting close to the end of its deflation cycle. We saw on the gauge a moment ago in the car that we were at 17 psi, so I'd expect this to stop imminently. If it doesn't, of course, we can just stop it at this point because we know the tyres, and there you go. The tyres now reached about 16 psi, ready to take it off and hit the sand and have some fun. We want to pop our tyre cap back on, of course, to stop sand making its way up into the valve and potentially leading to a leaky valve. So we've had our day of fun on the beach. Now it's time to come off the beach and pump up our tyres. I'm lucky enough to have planned ahead because I do this quite regularly, and I have installed a compressor on board all the time. Obviously handy for this situation, but handy for pumping up the kids' toys as well. It's an ARB twin compressor, so twin motor, twin piston compressor. There is a single version compressor available as well. This one's just faster. It includes an air tank as well that we've installed in this particular kit. Obviously there are loads of compressors out there on the market. They all do a great job in different formats, whether it's in a toolbox or a built-in, but it's an essential item to have when you're four-wheel driving on the beach or off-road. Have our trusty tyre inflator with a gauge as well. Our hose. And our air outlet. As you can see, this particular hose is long enough to reach all the way around the car. If you're trying to pump the tyres on a van or something, you may need an extension piece to get long enough. Pace check before you go. Okay, so we have our tyre that was down about 16 psi for driving. We'll clip on. Yeah, the gauge is showing about 16, so that's good. Off we go. The twin compressor makes this really quite easy. If you've got a single compressor, it will obviously take a lot longer. The twin one, you can get around and do the whole car within about 5 minutes or so. Up to 30. Now you can choose either to go all the way back to your normal highway pressures or just to get something approximate, 35, 36, and then go finish the job later. And maybe you're coming back on the beach again tomorrow, you're going to deflate again tomorrow, so yeah, go 35 or so. When you're ready to hit the blacktop on your way home, pull in the servo, fill up and take it all out to 40 PSI or so. Okay, there we are, 40 PSI, I've been here 2.5 minutes maybe. Don't forget to put the valve cap back on. Now we go to our other tyres. If there are other topics that interest you that you aren't finding information about online, message us and we'll see if we can make a video for you. Thanks very much for watching. I'm Derek from Lovells.